All I know is that first, you've got to get mad. You've got to say, I'm a human being. God damn it. My life has value. So, I want you to get up now. I want all of you to get up out of your chairs. I want you to get up right now and go to the window, open it, and stick your head out and yell, I'm as mad as hell, and I'm not going to take this anymore.
Hi guys, Ian Leivers here, just checking in with you. You all know me, the man fighting the grave miscarriage of justice.
Don't flinch. We're pulling the curtain back on the injustice on the Greenfeeds case, where verdicts were handed down, but justice was not served. So buckle up. This isn't just a broadcast, it's a reckoning. This is a case of a grievous injustice, and we want to understand how things went so wrong. Listen in every Saturday between 12 and 2 p.m. and hear how the story unfolds. You'll be blown away by its content. Only on Dreamcatcher Radio.
You want answers?
I think I'm entitled.
You want answers?
I want the truth!
So welcome back to Dreamcatcher Radio. This is episode number 8. I'm with Ian Leivers today. And I thought it'd be a good opportunity just to have a recap, a little bit of refresh to remind listeners about where we're at. When we first entered into this, I have to confess, I didn't realise that we'll be 12 hours in to discussing the injustice of Greenfeeds, but what I believe is a massive injustice has committed me to bring this story to light. And it's been a painful passage, if I'm honest, because one would believe this wouldn't go on in the UK. And it involves so many stakeholders. But we have to come to the realization in life we are where we are. So, Ian, before we go on to the next topic, which I want to talk about, is about your business. But I just want you to give listeners a recap to remind themselves, well, remind them, and possibly yourself as well, because you've been on this journey now with us at Dreamcatcher Radio, and it hasn't been easy for you whatsoever. And what you've had to deal with being at home by yourself without Gillian being there, which is obviously the most important thing for you. Dealing with the injustice thereafter, that can be dealt with, but it's the fact that Gillian's not there with you. And your weekly visits to the prison as well. Can we just try and talk through is, because one thing, your emotions go up and down for obvious reasons. I just want to try and, for listeners to understand that we've got to this stage, which has not been straightforward. It hasn't. But we've got so much more to do. And I quote you in this. You could talk for months and months about this. But obviously, listeners won't be listening for months and months. How are you feeling now, Ian? And also discuss, if you would, as best as you can, about what you've learned since airing this, which you've never done before, in such a lengthy period of time.
So what are we talking about, Brad? Firstly, thank you for having me back. It's again, I'm very grateful that you're sharing this story. Are we talking about how it's affected me mentally, or are we talking about my realisation that our judiciary system is broken? There must be other cases like this, and my realisation that going through a Crown Court trial, that these sort of things, shenanigans can go on, framing people.
Okay, in answer to your question, I know the answer to the first one. Does this sort of thing go on? I believe yes. There's lots of evidence, but in all honesty, with the amount of money that was spent in your case, I've not seen a case like this. Moreover, is Gillian's sentence. I've never, ever, ever seen anything like this, and I've researched it. I've gone on to Lexus, as I said before, but what I want to do is just really get people to understand. You had a normal family life, and I get it. There's two victims here, but Gillian's in jail. She shouldn't be in jail. But I want to try and just give I hate to say it, a synopsis of where you're at. We're now at episode 8.
Yeah, so to be honest with you, Brad, and we're covering this and we have covered a lot of it. What happened down there in the mixing shed that night had nothing to do with my company, my wife, or myself. We've covered all this. So this was another crime. But what has broken us both, that has affected us both mentally, is the realisation that our own defence worked against us. And I think we're now starting to uncover the reasons why. Now this is what has really destroyed our lives, because we put our heart and soul into giving all the factual evidence to those solicitors to defend us in court, and none of it was used. No defence witnesses were called. We've gone over this, the lot, even refusing me to give evidence. And so daily life is very difficult when this has started to sink in, and it has. So I don't know how Gillian goes on in jail, but for me, I can only speak for myself because I speak to Gillian every day, and I don't know where she gets her strength from. But for me, with this, as it's gradually seeped in, and the realisation and the evidence that we've collated from the attendance notes, so on and so forth, it has completely broke me. I was always a proud man, a strong man. I've always looked after myself. Never taken drugs. Never was a drinker really. We'd go out socially with friends at weekends, and that's what we did. We had meals. We'd have a bottle of wine between us, and that was about it. And so, how it's destroyed me is, as I say, with this realisation that it was our defence that framed us. And so, to get through each day, I can only tell you what it feels like. Some days, in fact, most days, it feels like, when you've been given some bad news, such as if, someone's called you and told you, your parents have died, something like this, the pit of my stomach every day, it feels like the lining has been ripped out. And then I get the nausea in my head. It's crushing at the front of my head as if it's in a vice. Sleep, I don't really sleep solidly. I have all the apps to look after myself. I'm on Garmin. I can see my sleep pattern. I do fall to sleep at night better these days. I refuse alcohol because I know if I did drink alcohol, it's a massive depressant, and then the next days I'm going to feel absolutely terrible. So to get me through, I have started with the cold water therapy every single night now. I do 10 minutes, and I believe this is helping me get to sleep. Yeah, I did have to seek the help of professionals in 2019, a psychiatrist actually, because of the fact that these solicitors who were there to defend us was putting different statements under my nose, changed statements, and saying the police can do this and people can change the statements, even though there was many of them not even signed. And so gradually it broke me down. From being a strong person and being a successful businessman, I just threw the towel in. I was having night tremors, and so in 2019, as I say, I had to seek the help of a psychiatrist, and I was prescribed medication, a lot of medication to get through, and this continued even when I went to jail. Although that's another saga. The first night in Leicester jail, I was refused the amitriptyline, which is what suited me. I was on a dose at that time. I think it was around about 75 milligrams per night. He had prescribed me previously 150 milligrams, but 75 always got me to sleep because this is what it was needed for. For me, these drugs were to help me get to sleep and stay asleep. And so I was refused it, and for the first few weeks in jail, I didn't really sleep at all. But anyway, I came out of jail and gradually put other things in place to get me off medication. I just have it now adult when I need it. I do lots of other things, as you know. I always put myself in uncomfortable positions. I like to find something uncomfortable to do weekly, which is like the half marathon, or which I've done recently, the full marathon. It's something to put your mind, to give yourself a challenge to get through. And I do this, even the cold water therapy. There's not a night that I think, oh, I'm going to go and jump in this this tub at 3 degrees. It's a challenge to get through, such as the fasting. You know, I've fasted up to 4 days, and it's something to keep you occupied, to keep you going. And then the first meal, when you come off the fast, it feels wonderful. But then you need to put something else there to get through. And so this is what I do, and this is how I get through. I just know that both my wife and I have been wrongfully convicted. This is a massive miscarriage of justice, and I cannot falter for my wife. I have to continue with this battle to get through. Yeah, we are both affected mentally. I don't think we'll both never be the same people again. We both are very forgetful. You could be talking about a topic or say, oh, and let me just tell you this, and then forget what you want to say. And you cannot remember for the life of you what it was. We both have this. But yeah, just to cap it off, I think what's made us both worse is the fact that the people who was entrusted to defend you framed you. And the amount of times that we wrote in emails, both of us, to those solicitors saying, we put our faith in you. You are the professionals. We trust you. You know, it was over and over again, repeatedly stating this to those solicitors. And so I think that is what's made it worse for both of us. Not the fact that it was another crime, which it was. The CCTV confirms this. It will never change. It's the fact that our own defence framed us. And you've heard from the guests earlier, Jake Welch and my son Lance, how both were refused to give evidence. And coming on to Jake's, it's you know, nightly when Jake was being refused, when the police were calling him saying they wanted him next day, and then they never did. We were saying, we've got to have Jake come. Jake, you know, he must come to give evidence. It was very important. And when the police then didn't use him, we saying we need to use Jake, and it just fell on deaf ears. We've recently discovered that you can't use them until the prosecution, because they're prosecution witnesses. But when the police didn't want him, that was our ideal opportunity. But of course, it was when we were saying to Kennedy's law solicitors, nightly, Jake must come to give evidence, and where is he? And the police are ringing him, telling him that they don't need him. We're saying, what's going on here? But what we didn't realise, behind our backs, they were ringing or talking to Leicestershire Police, Kirsty Iqbal, and covering this over. That these are the true facts. There was, you know, whatever we were telling our solicitors, they were passing this on to the prosecution. So how did we ever stand a chance in that Crown Court trial? We stood no chance.
On that point, thank you for just the reminder of where we're kind of at. One thing that's very important to me as an outsider is that Gillian's sentence does not make any sense whatsoever. And we're going to go through an email that I received today, which I showed you. And also we're going to talk about your business. Before we get to that, actually, just go back to emails. We welcome people sending us emails for or against Ian's position in what I believe, without a doubt, is injustice. Without a doubt. He's just talked about solicitors and his barristers. I believe it goes back all the way from the start. I'm on about the police and the HSE. Did you want to say something? You're looking at me.
No, I'm fine. You carry on.
Yeah. I believe it went from the start. I think it was massive issues. And I do not, for the life of me, understand how this has gone so wrong. However, we need to go to a break. Ian, would you like to introduce your next song?
Yeah, it's another Leo Sayer song. I Can't Stop Loving You.
Is that me or you?
Well, there you go, Brad.
Let's play that now.
So you're leaving in the morning on the early train. I could say everything's alright. I could pretend and say goodbye. Got your ticket, got your suitcase, got your leaving smile. I could say that's the way it goes. I could pretend that you won't know that I was lying. 'Cause I can't stop loving you. I can't stop loving you. No, I can't stop loving you. Though I try. We took a taxi to the station. Not a word was said. I saw you walk across the road. Or maybe the last time, but I don't know. Feeling humble, I heard a rumble on the railway track. And when I hear that whistle blow, I'll walk away and you won't know that I was lying. 'Cause I can't stop loving you. I can't stop loving you. I can't stop loving you. Though I try. I just can't stop loving you. I can't stop loving you. I just can't stop loving you. Why should I try? Why should I try? I just can't stop loving you. I can't stop.
Okay, let's use this episode to talk about your business model and how you operated. And there's, we get emails. We also get messages on our social media from various people. But I mean, one of them that come through recently was somebody called AD Plants. What's that about?
AD plants are anaerobic digestion plants that have sprung up around the country. These facilities take in different foodstuffs and they process it. It's what they do with it to make energy. From foodstuffs that they are supplied and they're processed, they turn it into electricity or indeed gas. These facilities are subsidised by the government, otherwise a lot of them wouldn't even stack up. And so my product that I supplied, which is a very high energy pig feed, was absolutely suitable for these facilities. They loved it. And so a lot of the product that I was selling, because our product never changed from load to load, it was always the 40% dry matter, and the analysis sheet followed with it that all nutritionists around the country had. They knew my product because of the high energy proprietors there, and also the proteins and amino acids. But anyway, it was the high energy part of it that, of course, talking about energy, high energy, was suitable for anaerobic digestion plants. And so we supplied in growing numbers these plants up and down the country. They was taking more and more of it and actually paying a premium for this feed, which left it in short supply for my pig farms. So that's what we did. And it was what these facilities did with it, their process, that turned it into the energy. Very interestingly, Leicestershire Police Force contacted one of my customers, an anaerobic digestion plant, and tried to assert that my product, what I was selling them, was methane gas. We've talked about this before. The prosecution barrister claimed I was selling methane gas and biofuels. It was outrageous. I screamed at those barristers that night, and my solicitor. I emailed and said, you've got to correct this, and we've covered what happened here in the previous episodes. And so, yeah, my energy feed was very sought after by AD facilities, and also my feed, because it was high energy. And you've got a mixture of products there with lots of sugars and yeasts. You mix them together and they will ferment. And so this is the reason that we put the additive in to stop fermentation. And if my staff didn't put this additive in, then it could cause issues, because when you go out onto the open road with my tankers and my competitors, other people who was in business similar to mine, you could have problems where you get these products mixed together and they ferment. There's been some very famous cases of, such as the ice cream factories. You can imagine there where you have all these sugars, where the expansion valve on top of the hatch on the top of the tankers, the inspection hatch, in my case, like such as the middle hatch there, the seals around those, the wing nuts that hold the lid down, there's so much pressure when these start bubbling and expanding that if there's a poor seal, it could come like a fountain, and it will keep on going. It will keep fermenting until those sugars are completely wore out. And so, yeah, I've had myself quite a few cases where the lids of the seals around the lid or the expansion valve, and it bubbles out. It's fermentation. This is what you get. And I've had a few cases, I say, where I've had loads come over, as have my competitors, because of the high energy in the feed.
Now, Ian, what I'd really like to talk about as well, sorry about the microphone, is, I know it's not specifically relevant to, well, I think it's relevant, but in terms of the incident of the day, but I want to talk about your business model and how structured it was, and how the system kind of worked. Can you talk about the day-to-day operations? And I think what's really important is, we've talked about health and safety before. We cannot abandon that issue. But just how your operation worked, and the importance of lorries unloading, loading, picking up, dropping off. It's like something you see on probably a Monopoly board.
Yeah, sure. Listen, Brad, my business model was very simple. And it's like in your kitchen. My mixing shed was like a U shape. You've got the door at the front where Draycott reversed the tanker in that night. And then down the right-hand side, you've got tipping bays. And so my lorries that worked back to back, I had one roll-on, roll-off lorry that worked 24/7. It worked nights and days. It went out to factories, such as up the road from me, you've got Lawrence Patisserie. They churn out around about 100, 150 tonnes a week of profiteroles and trifles. And you have to get up there to service them and exchange the skips. And so the lorry would go up, bring a load of profiteroles back, tip it into the bay on the right-hand side. I had bays down the right-hand side. Or it might even go off to such as Remenko, the very famous Remenko in Burton-on-Trent, we collected from there a mixture of molasses and meal. And so it would be tipped into separate bays. And then what would happen? The lorries that came back would be bringing back with them liquids to go into the reception tanks at the back of the mixing shed outside where you load up. They would pump into the reception tanks. Then you have a large blender, if you like. You're like just very same as your blender at home in your kitchen. You put so much liquid in, and then they'd go over with a loading shovel, bring in so much of the profiteroles or the molasses mixture, or it could be cakes, it could be donuts, you name it, and they would, or pasta. These sort of material go into the mixing tank. It would be blended together, and then you would have what I could describe as a sausage mincer. So you've got a massive outlet pipe from the mixing tank. When it's been mixed together to get the right consistency, and my product was always sold around about 40% dry matter, it would then get sucked through the sausage mincer with 10 ml oils and be pumped up to the holding tank. Above the holding tank, you would have a vibrating sieve, again with 10 ml oils. The liquid goes through into the holding tank, and from there, the holding tank would hold approximately one load. It is then pumped out onto the lorry tankers out the back of the mixing shed for the drivers to take away to the farms. And you'd use a positive displacement pump to pump onto the lorries, or indeed use the lorry's own pump and put it in reverse and it would suck the load on. And so this was the business model. It never changed. You've got high energy product. The only part that could change, which I didn't charge for, as you like, is the added value part. And this would be dairy products. If you wasn't using such as lemonade juice from such as Coca-Cola, and you had a lot of yogurt coming in, you, as we all know, you've got protein with dairy products. I didn't charge for the protein element. So they'd still mix it to the same consistency. The driver would then bring a sample up into the kitchen, and we had a moisture balance tester. You put so much liquid on there and it dries the product out, and then it turns into a biscuit. And indeed, these biscuits, when they dried out, because it cooked them and then weighed them to give you the dry matter content, used to smell nice enough. You could almost eat them, but of course you wouldn't. And so when it was dried out, and it might be such as up to 45%, it could even go 50% or down into the 30s. This was how you charged the farmer. So my office staff then, and my wife, because she did lots of the invoices and the accounts, this is what her role was, she would, let's just take my wife, for instance, who these people who killed the man claimed was running the business. She would, and wasn't she busy enough doing invoicing and chasing money? She would get the sheet, such as, let's just say that load was going out at 45% dry matter. She would go into the office, and let's just say, for that simplicity, we were selling it at £1 per percent dry matter. And so she would then go into the office, ring sometimes the farmer, because he would dry it too, to compare notes, and then they would come to an agreement. Or indeed, the farmers, majority of them, I'd say almost all of them, trusted us. And then so she would invoice out, and she would charge that load out at such as if it was 28 tons times by £45 a ton, because it was £1 a percent. And that's how we charged that. It was very, very simple. It never changed from one year to the next. The mixing staff who did the mixing, and this was mainly the Maruniacs, they actually could do a good job. It was simple. It was not very difficult to do because it was high energy feed. And this was the same product that was sold to the anaerobic digestion facilities. Again, they would be buying it, and some of them, they might be paying you up to, let's say, £2 a percent. So where are you going to go with it? If they want to pay you a premium because the government was subsidising what they were doing to make electricity or gas. It was very, very simple.
I just did a quick Google search whilst you were talking there, Ian, and I looked at what would be deemed as a a slush type mix, and it's obviously it's open to interpretation, but it's 2-part fluid, 1 part solid. How would you describe?
Let me help you there with that, Brad. When I started to make the confectionery blend, because that's what we called it at the outset, it wasn't called Greenfeeds blend back then. I copied the model from Sugar Rich. They are the biggest manufacturers in this country using co-products from factories. And way back then, they had a facility at Bromsgrove, and they made a product which they called liquid chocolate. Now, for you to understand, when you're talking about melting down such as chocolate and confectionery, that's got a lot of oil in there. It's not got the fibre in like you would get with cakes or bread. So let me just tell you, they sold their liquid, which they called liquid chocolate, at 60% dry matter. I sold it at 40 because you've got fibre. When you have fibrous material, like if you mix your Weetabix in the morning, it would seem to you, if you mixed it together, the same consistency of this chocolate, but that Weetabix might only be 15% dry matter because you've got fibre in there, such as like if you've got potato, high fibre, so you can't sell it at high level dry matter. You could have, if you melted, and I've just mentioned there what Sugar Rich did with their liquid chocolate. Let me just explain this to you. If you melt down just chocolate and sweets, in actual fact, you would find the dry matter, without putting liquids to those products, would be up there at 90% and still bumpable. And so what Sugar Rich used to do, they used to put water with their product so that when farmers was taking it from their tanks to 2-inch pipework, it would flow out. And so they sold it at 60% dry matter. I copied their raw model when they ceased business. They stopped making this product. And I went into the business manufacturing the confectionery blend around about 2004. And I sold my product always at 40% dry matter because you've got fibre in there. Therefore, you couldn't sell it at such high dry matter.
Okay, on that point, we need to go to a break, Ian. Or would you like to introduce your next song? Okay, I'll play a song. I like Sia, so I'm going to play a song by Sia. I'm sure Ian will appreciate this one.
World, I want to leave you better. I want my life to matter. I am afraid I have no purpose here. I watch the news on TV, abandon myself daily. I am afraid to let you see the real me. When it falls, when it falls, pouring on me, the rain it falls, when it falls, sowing the seeds of love and hope, love and hope. We don't have to stay stuck in the weeds. Have I the courage to change? Have I the courage to change? Have I the courage to change today? Have I the courage to change? Have I the courage to change? Have I the courage to change today? You're not alone in all this. You're not alone.
we're back. Something I want to go back to, just for the sake of the listeners who may not have listened back to this. 2 people lost their lives during this incident. Can you talk about health and safety? Because you, from what I can gather, have invested a lot in health and safety, not just in, for example, we now know that you had 70 risk assessments, method statements for business activities, but also with your relevant equipment that you provided staff. That's expensive anyway, but you were made out, and I'm going to try and find the quote while you answer this, Ian, in a minute. Can you talk about that? And I'm going to find a quote from the BBC or another newspaper. I can't remember which it is.
Sure.
While you're going to explain that, yeah?
Yeah, sure. Let me explain. Because we talk about PPE and all the relevant equipment for the job, whatever was needed. We had a company that used to visit us on a weekly basis called Premier Engineering. And Lance discussed this on his interview. When Premier Engineering arrived at my site, and it would normally be around about midday when my staff was having their breaks, it was open house. It was like a tuck shop. I never stipulated or put a cap on spend. So everyone was at the back of that van, and whatever they needed, they could have. Some months we could be spending £2,000 to £3,000 a month on equipment for my staff, and this included tools, PPE, wellies, overalls, gloves, you name it, they could have it. But isn't it interesting? Our Robin Neve, who obviously was blackmailed to come to court to lie, claimed that there was no PPE. And indeed, Nigel Curtis, the driver, that apparently Draycott was coming from the mixing shed to collect because he said it was a driver. But we all know it wasn't even Draycott, it was Dave Maruniak. Curtis, on the night, in his police statement, said that he believed the men had fallen into the tanker. Fast forward, I believe it was to November 2017, and he volunteers apparently to go back to the police and claim that people were going into the tankers, and he claimed that he came up to the office with Robin Neve and saw Aaron, the person who I've described earlier, who was taking over my role as the managing director, who was formerly or was always my accountant, and said that Robin couldn't breathe in tankers and they wanted breathing apparatus, and he claimed that Aaron gave him a dust mask. It was outrageous. But where was Curtis with these claims on the night? It wasn't there, because none of this ever happened, and it wasn't until the Maruniaks got to Robin Neve after the deaths in January 2017 and blackmailed him to make this police statement that was outrageous. And then, of course, this gives substance for Curtis to use this in his allegations, in his changed police statement in November 2017. In fact, when Robin Neve came to court, never said in his statement, he claimed that they had a revolt. They had a revolt regarding going into tankers to clean them out. And he was asked, who was in this revolt, Robin? And lo and behold, you know what he's going to say, don't you? He says, I think it was Mike and Dave Maruniak. He claimed that they came up to the office, saw Gillian, my wife, regarding entering tankers, claiming that they was refusing to do it. Well, nobody had ever mentioned this revolt in any statements at all. But during the trial, Robin Neve claimed there was this famous revolt, and he claimed that they had to call me, and I had to come down to quash this revolt. I mean, I sat there behind the glass thinking, are we real? Is this really happening here? Imagine Could you imagine, Brad, on the night, 2 people have just died in a tanker. Nobody knew why or how. This and me either. When I arrived, I said, and it's there on police body cam, what were they doing up there? As soon as Lance told me they died in one of my lorry tankers. But nobody mentioned this revolt. Wouldn't you think after 2 people have just died that no staff would return to work, that they'd refuse? You know, it wasn't Auschwitz where they were working, but according to Neve, during the trial, conditions were so bad that they had a revolt. It simply never happened. If this were true, Aaron Shelley would have made a statement claiming that we were sending people into tankers. He made no such statement. In fact, Aaron Shelley's statement given to Kennedy's law solicitors that was hidden, that I didn't see until 2023, the summer of 2023, after I came out of jail, claimed that he was disgusted that Nikki Maruniak claimed she didn't do health and safety, along with a lot more that he said in there. This statement was hidden from us. The police didn't interview Aaron Shelley until I told Aaron Shelley what was said in police interviews. These are all true facts, Brad. It is astounding what happened during that trial.
The Ian, I don't want to go over a ground, but this is quite important in some respects because we're at this kind of segue. I just want to read you this BBC article and just see how much this you can resonate with. This is by a journalist called Liam Barnes for the BBC. Managers of the food waste company. Are you a food waste company?
No, we're not waste. We couldn't call it waste. Trading standards would close it down if we called it waste. It was co-products.
Oh, okay. So that's incorrect, yeah?
Yeah.
Has been jailed after 2 staff members drowned in a tanker of pig feed. And I know for some of the listeners of this, we talk about the word drowned. Your proposition is they couldn't have drowned.
Well, it's a fact that they did drown, but circumstances. How did this happen? The narrative during the trial, and this is the narrative. This is not me saying it. This is in the court transcript. This is the Crown Court trial narrative. Draycott claimed that Nathan fell from his grasp under that middle lid, and he died in seconds. He claimed that there was fumes, gases, whatever, and he grabbed one glove. He slipped out, grabbed the other glove, and he slipped out and fell. And as I've always said, but right up to the trial, he made it sound like Cliffhanger, the movie. He made it sound like he was falling down a cliff. Well, in actual fact, I think from floor to ceiling, it is 1.8 meters and so forth. If you were stood up in that tanker, your arms would come out of that middle lid. It didn't happen. It was a complete pack of lies because Gavin was down there, and it's not me saying it. The Manitou fork truck is with Draycott when he's reversing into the mixing shed. Gavin was there with him. And so it was farcical. It was absolute nonsense, this narrative. And what's actually true facts hidden from the jury, that Nathan didn't die under that middle lid. It somehow climbed through that small 18-inch hole. I've been to the tanker myself. I've confirmed that it is possible with great difficulty.
Now, Ian, I've got, again, I've asked this of others and perhaps yourself. Why would he be, knowing, the relevant staff that were there with the experience they had, is to open the valve? Why would he be trudging his way towards potentially the valve?
It's unbelievable, Brad, because as we factually know, 11 minutes and 33 seconds after Draycott had reversed the tank into the mixing shed, we see him for the first time when he's coming up to the office, pulling his overalls on, by the way. He does this when he gets out of his cab. He confirmed this in the Greenfeeds trial. He was the first witness to give evidence. The CCTV camera that covers the weighbridge shows Draycott climbing out of his lorry, and what does he do? He pulls his overalls on. This is what some drivers do. I used to do this myself. If you've got dirty overalls on and you get in your cab, you do not want to dirty your seat. So what you do, you don't take your overalls off, you roll them down to your knees so you sit on the seat and it doesn't get dirty. This is what Draycott did. He confirmed it in the trial. So what I say is this. In those 11 minutes and 33 seconds that we do not see in the mixing shed, after Draycott had reversed his tank into the mixing shed, Draycott sat in his cab. He didn't know what was happening in that tanker. Because, as I say, when you see him coming up to the office, he's pulling his overalls on. Now, if he'd been up there on top of the tanker with Nathan, as he says, well, would he have been able to do this with his overalls round his ankles? And not only that, as you're looking at the picture now on the internet, Brad, you can see the ladder down the side. So would he be able to climb down that ladder with his overalls round his ankles? No. He was sat in his cab. He doesn't know what happened in the tanker that night.
The other thing I'm thinking about here, looking at this image, I don't know, come and sit next to me, Ian, so we can discuss this same image. Your tanker is very long, right? So you went up the ladder, and that, what you could best describe for a lay person is a submarine type hole, and they're saying he fell in.
Yeah, this is what the health and safety executive
to clean
told
out
Yeah.
a tanker
Yeah.
with no equipment to clean it out with.
Yeah. Well, absolute farcical.
Yeah.
You know, from standing on side of that ladder, I built that tanker. Formerly, it was a tanker with lagging around the side, and I had a catwalk down the middle. I took all of this and stripped it because the lagging wasn't necessary. We didn't need to keep the product warm. And so by taking the lagging off at great expense to me...
So that's off the skin of the tanker,
it's off the skin of the tanker.
Right,
and you can see I've painted it in company colours. We put a complete new bogey on. That means the chassis. That cost me £18,000 plus VAT. We stretched the rear of the tanker out at the rear, which Tim Walker did, and myself. Tim was the expert fabricator and built the system that suited us with the toilet trap system and put the ladder on the side that Tim affixed there for the drivers or staff to simply climb at waist height to open the lid to watch the load fill or empty, or indeed, if you was at a customer's premises, use a hose pipe or a jet wash just to wash out that little 2-inch strip that came down the curvature of the tanker to wash the tanker out, if you wanted to do so, but it wasn't necessary.
So, as I look here, below this ladder, there's this pipe. What is that?
That's what we built on the sides. They're pipe tubes. What you did with them, you put the pipes in there and you fix them at the back. You bolted them shut. Previously, we used to lock them so that somebody couldn't, if you like, sabotage the pipes. This was part of the feed scheme. The pipes had to be enclosed. What a lot of other tanker companies do, they have a tray and the pipes sit in the tray. But because we was carrying animal food stuff and part of FEMA's feed scheme, we changed them, and they wasn't cheap actually. Those pipes there that the pipes slide into to totally enclose them and cover them, that cost me a fair bit of money also. But we did this because of food safety. Everything was about food safety for animals. So when you made the finished product and you're going down the road, if you were stopping at services, nobody could actually tamper with the pipes.
Okay, I've got, following on for this news article, this interests me. The Nathan Walker 19, and we all agree this is, very, very tragic, died after falling into the tanker, right, at Greenfeeds. I'm thinking, you fall into the tanker, and the precursor to this as well for the audience is that how allegedly this all started was there was a mix, which is a blockage of concrete, and if again, I'm a lay person, that would be hard and dense, and this man fell a short height into a tanker. Let's just say it was not even, let's just say it's concrete. But the tanker's so long, and somehow they calculated it was 6 ton of mix. And we don't even know where that information comes from.
Well, Draycott did come on the weighbridge when he came back, as I say, as he's pulling his overalls on. He then came into the office and discussed this with Stuart Brown, the transport manager, general manager, and there was apparently, it was on the weighbridge. There was 6 ton. But very importantly, something here also, Brad. You see the photograph there. This was reported across all media outlets, BBC, ITV, the lot of them. Now, why is it this side of the tanker that the photo was taken? There was no photographs of the other side. There was no discussion regarding those 2 holes and where the men was taken from, not even during the trial. Now, very importantly, this is because on the other side, as we've all realised later and discovered through investigations, Nathan Walker had climbed through that rear small hole into the rear compartment. This wasn't presented to the court. As you've read out there, Nathan Walker apparently fell under that middle lid and died in that middle compartment, compartment number 2. This is not true. It was in the rear compartment. How could you fall from 1.8 and then find yourself, as you've just pointed out there, through this very long tanker, down through an 18-inch hole, and be taken from that rear compartment?
Okay. We're going to carry on with this article now. Ian, can we just play a song just because we need to go to a break?
Yep, sure. So,
if you can name
yep, the next song will be Killing Me Softly by Fugees.
Let's play that now.
Strumming my pain with his fingers, singing my life with his words, killing me softly with his song, killing me softly with his song, telling my whole life with his words, killing me softly with his song.
Yo, this is why Clef Refuge cries well. Little bass sitting up here on the bass. While I'm on this road, I got my girl L. One time. Hey yo L, you know you got the lyrics.
I heard he sang a good song. I heard he had a style. And so I came to see him and listen for a while. And there he was, this young boy, stranger to my eyes, strumming my pain with his fingers, singing my life with his words, killing me softly with this song, killing me softly with this song, telling my whole life with his words, killing me softly with his song. I felt all flushed with fever, embarrassed by the crowd. I felt he found my letters and read each one out loud. I prayed that he would finish, but he just kept right on, strumming my pain with his fingers, singing my life with his words, killing me softly with his song, killing me softly with his song, telling my whole life with his words,
Okay, let's carry on with this article, Ian, from the BBC. This is one of many. And actually, one thing that's quite interesting about when I first met you, you were not ashamed of this. You actually directed me Google us.
Absolutely. And this is what it's all about. I have nothing to hide. All I'm doing is untangling these lies to get to the truth. You know, what is my greatest truth that stands behind me? It's the CCTV footage. It's all the wrong people there at the scene. And the fact that the police, the HSE, never investigated this tanker. This photograph here was taken the next day. You can see the red tape there. Well, where's the forensics? Where's the people in white overalls? Where's the people to get inside that tanker to report, to confirm to us just how Nathan climbed through that 18-inch hole? All of the evidence was hidden. Where's the HSE? Where's the investigators to take the pump off to check to see if there was indeed a blockage? Nobody touched that pump. It took 5 years for an HSE engineer to visit the tanker at Hickson Airfield to finally take the pump off to confirm that there was nothing wrong with that pump. But interestingly, the pump had been tampered with. Why did it take 5 years? Listen, my wife's got life for this. What on earth? Where was the forensics? Where was the HSE?
I've got a question for you. Just thinking about it now. Was there, this photo here, you're saying it's the following day. Was there still product inside the tanker?
Now, interesting point there, Brad. When it went on say, it was 11 minutes and 33 seconds when Drake got seen for the first time. So he reversed his lorry into the mixing shed. I claim that he sat in his cab and didn't know what was happening. After 11 minutes 33 seconds, when someone must have shouted to him in his cab, you better go up to the office because whatever happens, happened. Then he's seen for the first time pulling his overalls on. He comes up to the office and says someone's in a tanker. In that time, Dave Maruniak's escaped, fled out of the rear small pedestrian door of the mixing shed to take himself as far away from the scene as possible. And when Draycott arrives at the communal main office door, Dave Maruniak is already stood there. And throughout all this, Dave Maruniak never put in his 2 statements that changed that he was unloading a lorry. But interestingly, in the Greenfeeds trial, all of a sudden, is unloading a lorry where there was no CCTV. Just a complete pack of lies. But yeah, here's the kicker. So, Draycott is there at the office door. Someone's in a tank. Lance jumps up and in full fight mode sprints down to that tanker as fast as his legs could take him. We can all see it on the CCTV footage. When he gets to the tanker, he cannot believe that those experienced people that use those tankers every single day hadn't even opened the valve to let the liquid out. All the liquid was still on the tanker, which resulted in the men drowning.
This is the alleged 6 tons that were like concrete.
Absolutely. Now, you imagine if that valve had been opened 12 minutes earlier, that 6 ton would have come off that tanker, which it did when Lance screamed, "Open the fucking valve." The valve was opened, all the liquid poured out. Lance described himself when he got inside the tanker, how he felt it draining down around his waist. It wouldn't have taken many minutes for that 6 ton to have poured out that tanker because there was no back pressure. It was just pouring out on the floor. What's more important, saving life or bothering about liquid on the floor? Interestingly, the police said there was a large puddle. This was in their report, a large puddle around the tanker. Well, what the fuck did they think it was going to be after Lance had that valve open? Did it matter? Yeah, the large puddle was the contents that resulted in them men drowning. That valve should have been opened 12 minutes earlier. Both men would still be here today.
And the point being, that would be the first thing any intelligent person would do. And notwithstanding that, I remember from the various people we spoke to, is that the gentleman that had a burner torch, Ramuniak said, "Don't do it because the tanker's going to explode."
Yeah.
How was that even possible?
Well,
to do that risk assessment that quickly, but also not think about opening the valve.
Well, let's just also break that down. Brad, when we've talked about many times, when apparently it's Draycott coming for Curtis. At that time, when it's actually Maruniak coming out of the mixing shed to fetch Curtis, the two fitters are carrying a ladder away from the scene. At that time, with him, they go one side of Curtis's tanker, Maruniak goes the other. They're carrying a ladder away. Rescue equipment. Now, later, when Draycott's been to the office door and those two fitters have found their way back down to the mixing shed, with cutting equipment, which would have been far quicker to have cut those holes open to, attempt a rescue, Dave Maruniak had told them not to do this. When Jake got there with the still saw later, they were both stood there with their fingers up the arse doing nothing.
Yeah, even Jake said he didn't understand why that nobody was doing nothing.
It is unbelievable. Let's just put something else into this mix also. In 2017, when the sabotage took place, Mike Maruniak...
You need to explain what the sabotage...
Yeah, well, it's a lot, and we'll go into this into detail another time, but I want to come to this point. Mike Maruniak was caught twice, on two separate occasions, smoking in the mixing shed. Indeed, the last time he was caught was on the very last day the health and safety executive inspectors visited my premises, August 2017. They never came back to premises after that. And on that day, Mike Maruniak was captured around the back of the holding tank in the mixing shed, smoking. And so he was dismissed. He went through the disciplinary process and he was dismissed. But here's his father on the night, claiming if there was a spark, the whole place would blow up. But there's his son smoking down there in the mixing shed. It speaks volumes.
And, as we've discussed before, it's fair to say that an angle grinder, metal, inside and outside, it creates a lot of sparks and nothing happened. And also was never covered in your method of risk assessment anyway.
Yeah, no, look, something else very important here, and Jake and Lance, obviously it's nearly 9 years on. This should have been discussed with the police at the time. There should have been a proper investigation. There was none. So obviously it's 9 years on. You've got Jake, he gets there with the angle grinder, with a still saw. Now, when I went to the tanker last year and this year, and I opened the lid, directly under the middle lid, where apparently Nathan fell dead, I could see light shining in from the outside. This was where Jake started to first cut, believing that the men were under the middle lid. Lance says he was in or out. I think he was on the top pointing, but he could have had Raphael on the top and Lance could have seen inside. So you see the first slit in the tank under the middle lid, and it would have been sparks going on the inside. So Lance is screaming, no, not there, it's further down. And so Gavin...
So Lance could see the sparks?
Absolutely. It's dark and you see sparks flying in. So Gavin wasn't even under the middle lid. He was down right up against that small hole leading into the rear compartment where Nathan was. You can see this now because I've now posted all over social media, and this has gone into the investigation also, the two holes that were cut. The hole into the middle compartment, which Jake cut, and I want to clear this one up also. You can see where he's cut the three sides, and then it's been peeled down by Dave Maruniak. This was the first hole that Jake cut, where Gavin was retrieved from in the middle compartment, right down there, up against that 18-inch hole going into the rear compartment. But as Jake explained, the still saw the blade had worn completely down, and so he couldn't make the cut across the bottom. This was when Dave Maruniak then reluctantly got on the Manito and used the forks of the Manito to peel it down to retrieve Gavin. Jake then runs up to the office, gets a new blade, comes back down and cuts the larger hole in the rear compartment to retrieve Nathan from. But something interestingly that both of them didn't say is because, as Lance said on his interview, he didn't know that Nathan was in that rear compartment. It was Mike Maruniak, who apparently had gone home, but hadn't gone home, who came back, and when the emergency services was doing CPR on Gavin, he put his arm into that middle hole and put his hand down to that little small hole at the bottom and said, "There's another one in here." This is what put Lance to his knees. He didn't even know Nathan was in that tanker. And so this was when the decision was made to cut the bigger hole in the rear compartment to take Nathan from. These are all true facts. But as you say, Brad, why did Dave Maruniak make this quick risk assessment that the whole place was going to explode when his son was caught many times smoking?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just yet another question in this case, really. I want to go on to carry on with this article. Gillian Leivers was jailed for 13 years, with her husband also, which is obviously yourself, sentenced to 20 months. The firm was fined £2 million. The bit that I don't get, and this is my biggest contention in all this, Ian, is how Gillian has been sentenced to 13 years. I believe it was longer initially, wasn't it, as well?
Yeah.
And what I mean, you had the best of the best in terms of health and safety, and following a message I actually received today, there was an inspector there on your site every month.
Sure.
Which I obviously never knew about. Sure. It only come to light today. Do you want to just talk about that a little bit? Well, it's actually not a little bit, actually. It's actually quite a lot. Let's talk about the health and safety aspect, because I'm just trying to find what the judge said. Let me just try and find it. You had a scarce account for health and safety on your premise, and the risks were inevitable. I mean, we briefly talked about before the fact that you continued trading for quite a number of years thereafter. But let's talk about the sentence and why your wife was sentenced. I can't even understand it. I'll be perfectly frank, Ian. How she's ended up with that sentence. It makes no sense to me.
Well, let me help you, Brad.
Yeah, please do.
Yeah. Well, my title of my book, My Wife Was Framed, says it all. Available on Amazon, with all proceeds being split 50-50 between rheumatoid arthritis and Alzheimer's Society. I have never opened that account to see what monies are there. This is the surprise for my wife, because she has all her life been a campaigner for different charities. This is what she did. As I said, she held monthly events in her salon, raising money for charity. Even received a signed photograph by Phil Collins, actually. She jumped from an airplane for charity. She's done runs for charity. So yeah, the money that's in that account will be opened when she is released. Well, let's get to it then. So, the title of the book, My Wife Was Framed. For the listener to understand, there was two people charged with this manslaughter charge. My wife and my transport manager. The person you would expect, if something like this happened, would be held accountable. Well, very interestingly here, because all those barristers from the defence were from the same chambers in London, the Crown Chambers, Stuart Brown's barrister, and ours. And I wanted to also state here, when I discovered that Stuart Brown's barrister was from the same chambers as ours, I wrote an email to my solicitor, James Rimpton, saying, "We've got a conflict of interest." He hardly ever replied to any of my emails, but he soon came back with that one saying, "No, we have not." But also interestingly, the prosecution barrister from the same chambers. We have in the attendance notes that the barristers discussed this between themselves, saying they had concerns because my barrister led the prosecution barrister in another case. So yeah, my wife was most certainly framed. So Stuart Brown, who you'd expect to be looked at or investigated for this charge. He was on the stand for 2 hours. My wife was up there being grilled for 3 full days. Why? It says it, doesn't it? You know, Stuart lied. He lied in every piece of evidence that he gave. He claimed at Wayfeeds that they went into tankers to wash a 2-inch strip from down the middle, Brad. Have you ever heard anything like it? Climbing in a tanker for a 2-inch strip?
No.
No. That's what he told the jury. He also told the jury that at Wayfeeds, that they went into tankers annually to check for cracks. Now, surely, if a stainless steel barrel was to crack, which stainless steel will last a lifetime, wouldn't you see it seeping from the outside? Would you want to climb into a tanker? It never happened. I've reached out to 2, or I had other people, should I say, reach out to 2 trailer fitters from Wayfeeds, because Wayfeeds no longer exists, and both said this is nonsense. This never happened. Stuart Brown, along with his barrister and our barristers, had to make Stuart appear naive. In fact...
But you're moving on very quickly there, Ian. The thing that I would question as well is there was never any policy or procedure to look for cracks in tankers. And I'm comparing it in my mind to something very basic, which happens all the time, is the tyre industry. How they approach looking for holes in tyres. This is totally different.
Yeah.
And this makes no sense, does it?
No.
And this was never questioned.
No, they just presented it to the jury to make Stuart appear naive. You know, the judge said himself that I gave Stuart no training. This is a man with 40 years' experience in the transport industry. It was the right-hand man for Richard Walker's of Tuxford, another large firm. It was the operations director at Wayfeeds. Wayfeeds was a company that employed over 70 men and ran over 40 tankers. I ran at my maximum 5 tankers, 45 tankers, or 45 vehicles at any one point. And yet the judge said I gave him no training. What training could I have given Stuart Brown? Indeed, before I stepped Stuart on, before Wayfeeds sold out and wrapped up the business, I used to ring Stuart on weekends, on Saturdays. When it was quiet, I'd go down to the office and he was in at Wayfeeds. He always used to work at weekends. And I would always ring Stuart to get advice on tankers. You know, I moved on to Scanias. They had Scanias. It was Stuart that told me to open up the footwell, which we discussed earlier. The outlet to the pumps, because previously I had 2.5 inch. And it was Stuart that said, if you open the footwell up, make it larger to the pump, it gives far more back pressure. So when I opened it to 10 inch, that liquid, if you like, is always force it onto the pump. These were the tips that he gave me. And yet, during the Greenfeeds trial, he claimed that they went into tankers to watch a 2-inch strip out.
Right. Okay. So he acted naive, innocent. I know he got a suspended sentence, but what you're saying is he misled the court.
More than misled.
I mean, his CV, if we were ever able to get a copy of it, would show that he's very experienced, right?
Far more experienced than me.
That's what I'm getting the impression.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Wayfeeds, when Stuart Bridge started his business, it was running decades before I started. You know, a massive outfit. How could I ever give Stuart Brown any training? If anything, he would be giving me training. I set him on to assist my son, Lance, because my wife and I had semi-retired in 2016. These are the true facts. It was Stuart running the business in 2016. Nothing to do with my wife. As we've discussed before, my wife has factual evidence. These are hotel tickets, plane tickets that confirm that she had 150 work days off in 2016.
Okay. The next bit in big bold writing here is pandemonium. Again, I want to remind listeners that this was reported that there was a blockage, which was like concrete. The thing that I don't get is how you can even establish that it's like concrete. I'm guessing you could put your fist up
Well,
the
yeah,
valve, just to
look,
put your hand in there or something.
right.
Or
I mean, Stuart, when there was falling out, you know, and you've heard Lance describe this and what Aaron said to Lance and Lance's response. When Stuart was falling out with Richard saying it can't set like with concrete, it's a true fact. Because, you know, all throughout this, and it's stated in many emails, I've always stated that I wanted to support Stuart because I didn't think he did nothing wrong. It wasn't until the trial that he came on and lied entirely throughout that trial. Throughout his 2 hours, should I say, of giving evidence. Now, he sat at his desk that night, and this is only what I was told by others, with his slippers on. Why didn't he go out to the tanker whilst it was on the weighbridge, climb up the rear ladder, the side ladder of the tanker, open the lid and look in himself? Why didn't he even go to the free flow pipe, the pipe that is there to load the tanker, with a bucket, with Richard, open that valve and see if some liquid came out? If he'd done this simple thing, 2 people would still be here today.
My assumption would be, knowing not anything about this industry, is that as soon as you open that valve, the pressure would be immense.
Of course.
Where you couldn't even put your hand up there.
Look, Brad, listen. Because Gillian had just arrived at 3 o'clock that day, exactly the same time that Draycott appeared back at site when he came back from Oxford. They both arrived at the similar sort of time. She was in the office and they was falling out, and this is what they were doing, and it was causing a commotion. Alex Fortune was there and she could also verify this. So Gillian simply said this, and this is what's got her life. She said, Richard, it cannot set like concrete. Back it into the mixing shed. Now, this is my wife that knows one end of the tanker to another.
Another point, just for a point of clarification, is that when the valve was open, there was slurry all over the place.
Yeah, it all came out. Police themselves, like
maybe not the entire 6 ton, but quite a proportion of it.
I can also tell you this, Brad. The very next day, the health and safety inspectors, later on in the afternoon, Alex and Jenna said to me, what are you going to do with that little bit that's left on, Ian? I says, because I didn't go down to the tanker. I was in the office. I said, can you just say that again, Jenna, please? She said, what are you going to do with that little bit that's left on? It was that 2-inch strip down the middle that Brad talked about. Nothing left on. All the liquid came out that night when Lance had the valve opened. But let me just come again, and I've said this many times. So my wife, Gillian, said to Richard, reverse it into the mixer shed, open the free flow valve, put the jet washer up there. So if you just put, obviously you'd understand, not a broom handle. This is a jet wash lance that would just go through past the valve. And just rod it into there. And if it's concrete, it won't come out, will it? And then climb up the ladder, and she told Richard to do this. She gave no instructions to neither. She didn't even see Nathan that day. She said, climb up the side ladder, open the lid, and jet wash in it. Wash in it. That's what she said. Get in it, wash in it. Did she mean get in it? Obviously not. And this is what she said on police body cam. I think, being just shocked after 2 men had just died, that she got her words all mixed up. Of course she meant just stand on the side ladder and just jet wash, using the jet wash on top of that 6 ton. And if it was like concrete, it wouldn't move. But if it flowed, it would prove that it wasn't concrete. And why did she also say this? Please let's not forget that going back right to when we was caught in 1979, my job at Dairy Crest, and I had to wash out about 40 tankers a day. My wife would come into the car park to pick me up at night after my shift, sit looking at the unloading bays, and I would climb up the milk tankers using a hose pipe, and I'd wash out by standing on that ladder. At no point did anyone ever climb into a tanker.
Ian, we need to go to a break. We've got a lot longer because I didn't want to stop you. I'm going to leave it with a question as well, because you probably don't know this, but I've been looking at this article now. Firstly, let's just go for your next. No. I need to ask you this question first, but I don't want you to answer it here. Right. Paragraph 2. Nathan Walker, 19, died after falling into the tanker. Yeah.
Yep.
So paragraph 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Nathan climbed into the tanker. Right. That's in the BBC statement. So he fell in.
Yep.
Paragraph 2. Paragraph 9. He climbed in. Now, I don't want you to answer that. I want you to discuss it next. But can you just introduce your next song, please?
Yep, sure. It's Fleetwood Mac, Rhiannon.
Let's play it now. Fleetwood Mac, Rihanna. So, Ian, you seem very surprised by that news article, where this is a denominator, and also an oxymoron in some respects, where the BBC have reported, like others have, that Nathan fell in, and then it says later climbed into the tanker. The bit that I don't get is, did he climb in with equipment? Did he climb in with lighting? And why did he climb in there? What was the overriding objective?
Well, it's not that I'm surprised, Brad. It just confirms that whoever gave these media outlets their information knew nothing what they were talking about. Did he fall in? Did he climb in? Because let me tell you, that night and the days after, those down there at the scene, whilst they was creating their narrative, they didn't know what to say. They was coming out with all sorts of revelations, should I say. What would you climb into a tanker for, or hanging, dropping, name it what you like? If there was a blockage, and to this day, nearly 9 years on, nobody to this day has told me where a blockage is, what it compromises of, and how do you clear a blockage? Do you clear it with your hands? Do you clear it with your feet? Do you go in with drain rods? You know, what do you clear this bogus blockage with? Because to this day, nearly 9 years on, I want the answers to this. I demand the answers. Someone's got to tell me how you clear this bogus blockage. Because let me tell you, getting into that tanker that night with a jet wash, but not stating how you would clear this blockage with this jet wash, is nonsense. It's farcical. It is beyond belief. And let me tell you, this complete pack of lies has resulted in my wife getting life. How on earth did this ever get through a Crown Court trial? What is the purpose of having Crown Court trials if these sort of things happen, where people can go through Crown Court trials, lie from their back teeth, commit perjury? Let me tell you, those same solicitors that we employed, Kennedy's law solicitors, when I came out of jail, kicking and screaming, I demanded a perjury report be put together. They put a perjury report together that confirmed all those people down there at the scene lied from their back teeth. This took 3 solicitors from Kennedy's law to put together in the summer of 2023. Why wasn't this presented in my wife's appeal? Why didn't they scrap their pathetic appeal with some lame law points that those judges could simply dismiss? Where was the truth? Equally, they put together a CCTV report that confirmed all those people lied from their back teeth. We're talking here about blockages. It's a farce. Let's just forget blockages. Let's just go to the facts. All those people in the Greenfeeds trial committed perjury. It is confirmed in the perjury report. It is confirmed in the CCTV report. These 2 reports should have gone into my wife's appeal, and had they done so, my wife would be at home with me right now, or we would be travelling the world, retired. These are the true facts. But it's not happened because they wanted my wife's appeal to fail, and they wanted her to continue to serve out their life sentence. Kennedy's law solicitors, those very same solicitors who I demanded put these reports together in December 2023, after the appeal failed, had a junior solicitor start to fill in the CCRC application, and they wanted to submit that put together by a junior solicitor. Nathan Buckley told me I was holding it up because I knew the penny dropped. That barrister from South Wales who was working with me, talking to me, giving me the facts, said, these solicitors want your wife to serve out their sentence in jail, Ian. And so I started to wake up. And then Nathan Buckley said to me, I was holding up putting this CCRC application in. He told me that let's have a Teams call with the CCRC. This is outrageous. The CCRC have been investigating this case now for almost a year, and it's got a lot more to go. Where on earth would it go with a Teams Zoom call?
Okay, I want to take you to this. He climbed into the tanker, but was soon overcome with carbon dioxide fumes that built up in the confined and unventilated area.
Interesting.
But just bear with me, Ian. Bear with me. Leading him to collapse and drown in the pig feed. Now, obviously, we've got the evidence from Lance, and I believe he's a good character reference because there's other people supporting that events of that day who was in there for 20 minutes. And we're not just talking about one person. At the moment, we're talking about Mr. Walker, right? Overcome with fumes. Can I have your comment on that?
Well, yeah, of course. You mentioned the carbon dioxide. People have said toxic. The word toxic. If I was selling my confectionery blend, Greenfeeds blend, and it was toxic, those profiteroles and chocolate and donuts mixed together, then surely pigs would be dead up and down the country. And indeed, if it was toxic, when those pigs were slaughtered and you was eating your pork chops on a Sunday or your Sunday roast, then you too would have become ill if it was toxic. So toxic was invented. Throwaway statement. Never confirmed. My feed could never have been toxic. You mentioned the carbon dioxide. Nobody ever discussed to me this being carbon dioxide. Let me tell you what happened here. In the summer of 2023, when I was at home at my cottages doing the development there, I had a conversation with Nathan Buckley, my wife's solicitor, and he mentioned the word carbon dioxide to me. I said, carbon dioxide, Nathan? Well, carbon dioxide, it's my understanding, is a very heavy gas, low-lying gas. I said, how could this be, if this was low-lying, when the lid was open on the tanker, then that gas couldn't have risen and come out? Because it's a fact that Lance went into the tanker up to 20 minutes. So how could this be? And he said this to me, I'll have to go away and check. Well, he never came back with the conclusion to carbon dioxide. Because again, another word, as you've said before, throwaway statement. Nothing was ever tested. The very next day, after those men died, someone from the HSC laboratories turned up and took 2 samples. He took one away with himself and left one for me in a sealed bag. I gave this to my solicitor, James Shrimpton, because he arrived at lunchtime, and I never heard no more about that sample. In fact, last year, my detectives in 2024 asked for this sample. I emailed Kennedy's Law solicitors, no reply. So, yeah, nobody wanted to confirm the true facts. Nobody wanted to confirm that indeed there was nothing wrong with my product. Nobody wanted to confirm that there was that night no fumes, no gases, nothing toxic in that tanker. Because there's nothing more factual than the fact that my son, my only co-director, Lance Leivers, selflessly went into that tanker because the narrative when he arrived there that don't get in there, there's fumes, risked his life to try to save those men.
That's an actually important point. He ignored what everybody else was telling him. He just thought, I'm going in.
He wanted to save life, which is, he explained on your interview with him, which is what he did. Another incident. You don't run away from danger, from scenes, when there's a rescue needed to try to save life. You run to it, which Lance explained to you he did in another incident. Indeed, my wife and I in 2015, on a Sunday evening, had been to visit my parents. We were driving home. We lived at Rainworth at the time. We were driving home that night, and Going through Ravenshead, heading down towards Little John. Two young teenagers overtook us in a little car, and as we came further down the road, just past the Little John over this ridge, they'd gone so fast that they lost control. They hit a van on the other side of the road. I pulled up in front of this van. The van was there with his hazards on, and the farmer was just climbing out of his van, and he was, again, this is what you do. You ring emergency services. And as I pulled up, I asked Gillian to also ring the emergency services. And I got out my car, and their little car was perched on top of the edge on its side. I climbed up through that edge. It was a hawthorn edge, and I didn't feel that I was getting cut to pieces. I climbed up there because this is what you do. You want to save life. And I'll never forget what I saw that night as I climbed up, and the car was on its side. It was the passenger side window was broken, and I do not want to speak about this, but I stayed up there. There was these teenagers' friends. They started to turn up before the emergency services did, and one of them actually knew me, and he said, "Ian, it's Dominic, Gary's son. He wanted to climb up, and there was some young girls turned up, and they were screaming." But I didn't want nobody to climb up there. And I also, I remember, I'd no training with CPR or first aid, but I just remember putting my hand in through the passenger side window, and I tried to feel a pulse on one of the young lads' neck, actually. But what run through my head was, do I kick out the front windscreen? That was what's running through my head. And do I try to drag them out? But I just knew I couldn't do this, and I knew enough to know I couldn't move them. And yeah, this is what the actions you do. On that night, and we've not gone into this too, before Draycott is seen exiting the mixing shed on 11 minutes 33 seconds, on round about 11, on the minute 11, I've never shared this CCTV footage with anyone. Jack Maruniak flees the mixing shed. He is holding a mobile phone to his ear, but he's not ringing 999. It's confirmed in the Maruniak's texts between each other, Mike Maruniak and Nicky Maruniak, that he rang his dad. And then, of course, as I've explained before, it goes up the yard. He sees Pat Rutherford. Pat Rutherford's statement was hidden. I didn't see this until 2023. And Pat says that he thought it was very strange that he didn't ask him to come running down to the scene to save life. But he simply said, "Have you seen my dad?" He then proceeds on, goes into the staff car park, opens his boot, captured on another CCTV camera, puts something inside his car, and then hides. And on the CCTV footage I shared with you last night, Brad, you can see when Lance sprints to the scene, Jack Maruniak is the last person scurrying back down to the scene. What did this man put in his car? Very importantly, that night, the pink Parrot lorry, the lorry you see outside the mixing shed, the white cab lorry.
Is that the one on the right-hand side?
Yes, the white cab, the curtain side of lorry. The police didn't allow that lorry to be left site that night. The owner of that company Mark Scully, came to site to pick up his driver, Steve Lane, and they came back for that lorry the next day. So that's very important, isn't it? Although the police never carried out any searches of that lorry, they wouldn't let it be taken away that night. But Jack Maruniak and all my other staff were allowed to take home their cars. There was no searches done of their cars. There was no blood tests taken. There was no seizing of mobile phones. There was absolutely nothing. So this failure to carry out any investigations at all has resulted in my family being destroyed, being blamed for these deaths that had nothing to do with this.
And before I go on to my next question, but what you're saying is, though, Ian, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, this is what you said to me, is that you're not only looking for fighting injustice for yourselves, but also for the actual victims.
I am indeed. it is not only my belief, I know, using facts and facts only. Remember this, Brad. God detests liars, and this is God's wills and God's ways. Both Nathan and Gavin, to this day, are somewhere between earth and heaven. They have not been received.
I heard you mention that before.
Yeah, they're not received into God's arms, because the true perpetrators of this grave crime have yet still to be discovered.
Now, Ian, we haven't got a lot more time. I just want to go through this, continue with this short article, and it is very short actually, which is a shame. He climbed into the tanker, which we just discussed, but was soon overcome with carbon dioxide fumes that built up in the confined and unventilated area, leading him to collapse and drown in the pig feed. Just bear with me. I'm going to get to the point where I'm going to ask you a question. When he got into difficulty, his colleague, Mr. Rawson, attempted to rescue him, but also died. What is your thoughts on that bit?
Well, all of it is a complete pack of lies. It's nonsense, because, as I explained earlier, on the CCTV footage that I've only recently discovered myself, Gavin is on the Manitou, driving down the yard at the very same time as Richard Draycott is reversing the tanker into the mixing shed. So he is there on the scene with Nathan. They went into that tanker together that night, and whatever happened inside that tanker, which is what my wife said on the stand, they're hiding something. Very importantly, as Lance said, the prosecution barrister said to my wife, "And so, Mrs. Leivers, are you saying there's a cover-up?" And she said, "No. They are your words, sir, not mine. What I am saying is something happened in the mixing shed that night that is still to be discovered." And I stand by my wife, what she said. We all need to know what happened in the mixing shed that tragic night, December 22nd, 2016.
Okay. Also, in summary, Judge Peter Fraser said, this is Mr. Walker, was hardworking and had only been at Greenfields for a few months. That's a fact. We've established that. But planned to leave because he was increasingly unhappy and scared with some of the tasks. What does that mean?
Well,
in your interpretation.
Okay. So it was the Maruniacs, Mark Maruniac, that set him on. They were their friends. So what was he scared of? We do know that Robin Neve was being bullied, as confirmed by his doctor's notes. In his doctor's notes, it says this: "Do not send anyone." No, I beg your pardon. In his text to my wife, he says, "Do not send anyone from the yard to my house." Well, I'm not in the yard. Lance isn't in the yard. Gillian isn't in the yard. And he's texting this to my wife. So he's not accusing us. It's those people who blackmailed him. These are true facts.
Okay, let's go on to this. I'm just jumped a paragraph because it's just regurgitating itself here. Let's go on to this next one. The court heard there was pandemonium after Mr. Walker fell into the semi-liquid pig feed. I think it's really important because this is what you've been saying all along.
Yeah, very important point that, Brad, actually, because pandemonium. Those barristers from the Crown Court chambers wanted the jury to believe that this was chaos. Stuart Brown was asked these questions by his barrister. "So, Stuart, it was chaos, was it?" Yeah, chaos. Everyone, chaos. Well, where's the chaos part in all of this? Because we could see my son Lance Leivers. This wasn't chaos on his behalf. This was determination to get down there to attempt a rescue. You heard him, Brad, speak to you when you interviewed him. His actions, knowing that he had to make himself light, stripping off. This was someone with some determination. When he got down there, it wasn't chaos when they was all stood around the tanker refusing to open the valve to try to attempt to save life, to stop them drowning. 12 minutes had passed when Lance got down there. He said he got down there in a minute less than. It's 11 minutes 33 seconds when Drake got seen for the first time coming to the mixing shed. So after 12 minutes, when Lance gets there, the valve is firmly shut. So where's the chaos part? I don't see chaos part on Lance's behalf. Then we have the fitters come back to the scene with the cutting equipment, the gas bottles to cut the tanker open. There's no chaos on their behalf where Maruniak has stopped them cutting the tanker open. They just stood there all doing nothing. I see no chaos there. And then we have Jake Welch finally run to the scene with a still saw and his determination in trying to save life. I don't see chaos there. But presented to the court the narrative, because I wasn't allowed to give evidence and talk, Stuart Brown, with his barrister, created a narrative to present to the jury that it was chaos. Do you see any chaos in what I have just described to you?
No, but it goes on to say, Ian, and this is equally very, very important, I believe, as well, is that the court heard that the I'm terrible at these sort of words because there's too many letters, pandemonium, after Mr. Walker fell in the semi-liquid feed, which the Leivers' son also, at one point, they don't describe at which point, attempted to rescue by using a ladder. Sorry, let me just get it. That doesn't even make sense, actually. At one point, attempting to rescue by using a ladder. Yeah, that doesn't even make sense, actually. That's not even proper English. I'll just read it as it is. But I think I've got the gist of it. A point, attempting to rescue before using a ladder to climb out of the tanker when he could not breathe. Now, obviously, I've talked to Lance. His issue was not lack of breathing.
Well,
his issue was that things have regressed in such a significant way that.
Let me just clear this up, Brad. Is this Peter Fraser's words? This is the judge's words.
This is okay. Let me just. The court heard. It doesn't say who said this.
So okay. So
it said the court heard, so it's not the judge. Yeah.
So who did they hear by? Did they hear this from Lance? Wouldn't they want Lance Leivers, co-director?
No, Lance wasn't even put before the court.
No. So where's this come from? Is it hearsay? Wouldn't you think a Crown Court trial resulting in Lance's mum being sentenced to life, wouldn't you think they'd want to...
Oh, actually, 1 second, bear with me, one second, it carries on. Without that, he would probably have died in the tanker, the judge said. It's the judge that
it's the judge, is it?
Yeah, it's the judge.
So that judge, Lord Justice Fraser, the judge, the hero of the post office workers. This judge was the person that...
It's the same judge?
Yep. Oh. He blew the post office job apart, okay? Your eyes and scandal. So, is the hero for the post office workers. Why wasn't he the hero who wanted my son, Lance Leivers, co-director of Greenfeeds, to tell him what he did that night? Why was Lance Leivers absent?
Let me just pause you there as well, because there's something more here, which is very, very... I need you to answer this. The judge said Greenfeeds had repeatedly been warned of the dangers involved in cleaning tankers by yard staff, but simply ignored the protests.
Yeah, who warned us? Was it Robin Neve? Was it this man? Because who warned us? You've got Aaron Shelley, who came in to be managing director of 2016. Never saw or heard anyone in a tanker before. These people in the main office, the brain of the business, Alex Fortune, never heard anyone going into a tanker before. So, and Lance Leivers, who went into the tanker, refused to allowed to give evidence. So where did he get this story from? Was it those down there at the scene who he allowed to go through his Crown Court trial unidentified, refusing to hide? Was it Jack Maruniak, who he allowed to turn his back on that large TV screen in court, refusing to look at it and let him go? Was it him? Was it Dave Maruniak, who he actually said in his own words that the CCTV footage is indistinct? Was it Richard Draycott, the first prosecution witness, who confirmed that it wasn't even him?
I'm thinking about, because I'm reading on after this here as well. Did any of your staff ever reported you to the health and safety executive?
No, never.
Because it goes on to say here, again, using the word protests, the judge said Greenfields had repeatedly been warned of the dangers involved in cleaning tankers by yard staff, but simply ignored the protests. I mean, that's quite a powerful statement, isn't it?
Absolutely. You know, I was Gold Star member of Peninsula Insurance for 5 years. Listen, as we said, so you've got the police carrying away the next day over 70 risk assessments and training records put together by Peninsula. We even had a risk assessment for my lorry drivers for driving in bad weather.
Okay, right. We're not going to be able to digest all this email. This news article, because I didn't realise this was that big. It goes on to say, and this astonishes me actually, to be honest, bearing in mind what I know about it. This is the judge actually continuing on. I'm guessing in his submission. You're a company that had absolutely, this is what it's saying, Ian. Yep. Bear with me. Don't hit me. No regard for the safety of its employees. He said it was a dangerous culture where safety procedures were not implemented. Just before because we're going to end on this, and we're going to come back on this on the next episode. Ian, can I have your response? I mean, well, like I say, I've never read this before.
That's fine. So the response to this one, let's just clear this one up. Let's clear it up. So it's so bad, isn't it? Yeah. He's made it. This is beyond bad, what he said. How on earth did I carry on for 4 years afterwards? How on earth was it possible for me to carry on in business for 4 years afterwards, employed Peninsula again to look after my business? The Peninsula person came down and did walk-arounds, checks regularly, but never once asked me to put in place a risk assessment for entry to tankers. I think this is my response to Lord Justice Frazier. I would like him to explain to me how it was possible that I continued for 4 more years with no staff, no new staff who worked for me, or staff who worked for me at that time, ever complaining about anything. In fact, all those staff that worked for me, that weren't part of whatever happened down there that night, and you've read out some of the hidden statements, Brad, couldn't speak highly enough of my family and what we did for them. You know, allowing them to go to stay in my homes in Spain, buying them company vehicles, all of them having free fuel, including the Maruniacs, free diesel, mobile phones, unrestricted. The list is endless. This is what my family did for my staff. No complaints about ever entering tankers. And for 4 years afterwards, this bogus blockage never reported once. Apart from, as Lance said in his interview, and I want to clear this one up, Richard Draycott repeatedly coming back with more and more load on in 2017. I think the final one was something like 20 tons. Now, I sent out another driver with the same tanker the next day. We just simply filled it up on top of that 20 tons, and he would take it to another farm using that farmer's weighbridge and offload all of that load with no problems. I built up all this information, sent it over to our solicitors, and then finally shook Richard's hand and said, Richard, it's not working out, and I let him go. These are the true facts. But I just want to add to this. Richard had tears in his eyes, actually, when I said this to him. It was Richard, when I went to see him a few nights after the deaths, after seeing the Maruniacs, who said to me, and he said this to me repeatedly, again, this is documented, been given over to Kennedy's law solicitors. Richard repeatedly said to me, Ian, this is not your fault, and I say this from the bottom of my heart. That says it all.
Now, unfortunately, Ian and I did continue talking for a number of more minutes to come to the end of the show, but unfortunately, I need to cut the show off at 2 hours. So, thank you very much for listening in to part 8. Please listen out for part 9 next week here on Dreamcatcher Radio. We'll be here every Saturday, pretty much looking at the current schedule for what more to come in the Greenfeeds case. We'll definitely be up here doing a show every Saturday, probably to the end of the year at this current time. Have a great Saturday.
Thank you for listening to our guest stories this week.
Dreamcatcher Radio.
From around the world, this is
Dreamcatcher Radio.